A motion to open meeting?
You guys are good, thank you.
Okay, anybody want to second the motion to open?
I'll second.
I'll second.
Okay, looks like Mark beat you to it, so I usually try to like go around in a circle to get, I have to do roll call. So, Michael?
Yes.
I say yes. Rachel?
Yes.
Janet?
Yes.
Okay, and Mark?
Yes.
And Aisha?
Yes.
Okay, we are officially opening our meeting, and it's exciting to be at least somewhat in person. Thank you for everybody who could join us remotely. It's great to celebrate St. Patrick's Day with my fellow Irishmen over here. And good to be here. So, first of all, I do want to welcome our new member, and I think a good thing to do would be maybe Mark can tell us a little bit about himself, and then if each of us can introduce themselves and say whatever they might want to say about who they are or about their work on the committee, I think that would be great. And as you know, 2 people are missing, but I'm sure that you will meet them next time as well. So, Mark, I cannot tell you how excited we are to have you join us. And thank you. So why don't you just introduce yourself if you could?
Sure. Mark Rassicott. I have been a Stoughton resident for somewhere around 30 years now. My wife and I moved back here. She grew up in town. I've been involved with the town in various ways in the past. I was on the Conservation Commission many, many years ago. I was a member of town meeting, again, many years ago. But then work got involved, and I got too busy at night, so I had to give that up. I've just recently retired from Metropolitan Area Planning Council. In fact, I was the manager of the land use division. I did not interact with the folks who are in clean energy. I did have some interaction with the folks who were doing community engagement. Clean energy is something I've always been interested in. I put solar panels on my house. I've got a composter in my backyard. I'm a tree geek. I want to see more trees planted in town, and I think that can have an impact on heat island impacts and that kind of thing. And I guess that's about it.
That's terrific. Welcome. Michael, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi Mark. Michael Horan. Moved to Stoughton, originally from North Jersey. Lived in Philly, North Jersey, South Jersey. Moved to Boston area about 20 years ago. Then moved to Stoughton about 18 years ago. Been on Housing Authority for a few years, town meeting for about 15 years now. Currently on Conservation Commission. It's about my 3rd year in conservation. Been active in other organizations, Democrats, etc. in town. Pretty invested, and background. I did a doctorate in English, and then later 10 years ago, did a organic farming certificate.
Oh, wow.
Thought about that for a while, and then went to law school, and so that's about it.
Wow.
Got a few kids, grandkids now. My daughter's living in town, and also becoming, much to my surprise, maybe I shouldn't be, but much to my surprise, becoming very invested in town government and so on herself. So
Yeah,
it's been nice to see.
I wish I could get my son and daughter-in-law more invested in town government. They also live in town.
Oh, awesome.
It's tough, especially if you're
Yeah.
younger and you have
Yeah,
kids.
they get really young kids.
You
It's
got
hard
one,
for them.
yeah.
All right, so Mark's already talked to me for about 45 minutes, so, but I'll let Aisha, do you want to introduce yourself to Mark?
Hi, Mark. My name is Aisha. My last name is Oloyede Edward. I'm happy to meet you, and thanks for joining us. We have a very formidable team here. Comprises of different people from different works, different background. It's been an exciting time just getting to know people, working together to make sure this community where we have found ourselves to reside in becomes one of the best in the hub around here in Massachusetts. We're just giving it our best. In profession-wise, I'm into environmental health and safety. I'm very happy to sometimes be called upon as a resource to talk about some of the things But again, I have people who beat me to it, so I'm just gonna leave it there. Thank you so much.
Thank
Great to meet
you.
you.
Rachel?
Well, hi. I'm Rachel Lazarus. I'm a secretary. Unless you'd like to take that over, I'd be fine with that. I have lived in Stoughton since 2016. My spouse and I have 3 beautiful daughters who often like running in during the meetings. So that might be a fun break. And I have a master's degree in public policy from the University of Chicago. So I really enjoy doing like program evaluation, cost benefit analysis, and just basically doing research in general. I'm kind of picking up a lot of odd tasks around town. I'm currently working on giving presentations about senior property tax relief for the town manager's office, and I've been tapped by a couple members of the select board and the town manager to volunteer, work for free, and I just realized how badly the town manager tricked me into doing some of this. But I'm trying to get good things happen. I'm also running for the SRA, and I just discovered that the reason why we don't have an urban renewal plan, they're very unhappy that I realized this, but it is because the SRA needed to submit the urban renewal plan. So that's something that it took about 5 minutes of reading to figure out, and I hope to be that kind of tape cutter and ability to do something, get things done kind of person in general. So
Great to meet you.
Thank you. And Janet, want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Janet Weinstein. I've been here since, let's see, 1998, I guess you could say. So I guess 26 years, or 27, almost 27 years. I've been a teacher in the school system in different towns in the area. I've done a lot of social action type things, whether it be for my synagogue, the Girl Scouts, all types of things, I guess, different organizations. Right now, I guess I'm not doing any kind of offices except to be I am a town rep, and I am on the I think it's the Historic Preservation Commission. I just don't have many meetings, so I don't hear from them too often. And I think there was one other one I signed up for that doesn't call me that often either, what I said. But anyway, I'm very interested in the environment, and just trying to make us more sustainable, and I enjoy coming to these meetings. I do have an elderly father, so I deal with him as well as my husband and other things. And I just became a grandparent last year, so I had my first grandchild, which is the best thing in the world. Just was over visiting, and I just love helping out and being with people, and I'm very social action and oriented. So this is a very important thing to me, the climate. So.
Awesome. Well, that is terrific. Thank you, everybody. And I always learn something new about people when we do this, so that was very helpful for me too. The next thing we have on our agenda, and I am so happy to say that we have first it was Michael, and now Rachel. We've actually done a great job on our minutes. So we have our minutes from our last meeting to review. I just want to go around and see if anybody has any comments or edits. I just had one thing, I think. But Michael, did you have anything?
No.
All right. Aisha, anything on the minutes? Sent by Rachel, and you can take a look at them now if you need a moment. Sent by Rachel this afternoon, I think.
yeah.
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, Janet, any edits to the minutes?
Everything's fine. I looked at it again just now, but I already looked at it and it seemed fine.
Okay, and I just had a couple of comments, Rachel, was the paragraph about the zero waste rep and her proposal. I would just characterize it as an opt-in or a voluntary pay-as-you-throw, because it wasn't, what's on the table, yeah, it's not across the board, it's like an opt-in. And then at the paragraph number 6, it's the Sharon Sustainability Coalition is their official name, coalition. So other than that,
And Sustainability Coalition. Not
Yeah,
Okay.
that's in paragraph 6. Does anybody want to make a motion with regard to the minutes? To adopt the minutes? Anybody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
All right, anybody second it? Second, read the minutes? Looking for a second? Actually, Michael wasn't here, so Aisha, can you second the motion for the minutes?
Sure, I'll second.
Thank you. All right, we're going to take a roll call. I vote yes. Aisha,
Yes, please.
Rachel,
Yes.
and Janet.
Yes.
Okay, so the minutes are officially adopted with those 2 tiny edits. That is terrific. And the agenda is probably not as bad as it looks, but who knows what discussions we'll get into. I have been having some, we have been having some discussions and thoughts about the substantive elements of the plan, and we're trying to pivot now. I mean, MAPC has done some community engagement. We did a climate audit tool, which was hours and hours of work, very technical work, actually. And we really want to pivot to, let's lay some proposals on the table. Let's see what points we want to bring to the public for future community engagement. And just wanted to circle around as to anybody who had any particular either ideas or areas or subject areas. They're like, you know what, I'm really interested in this, or I think this is fundamental that we have for our plan. So I'm just going to open that up, including certainly opening it up to our new member, Mark, with thoughts that he might have regarding, and we actually, just as an MAPC update, we'll be meeting in person, Rachel and I, and Mark, if you can join us too, with MAPC the 28th on a Friday. And that's when I would love to say, here's where the committee wants us to be with respect to, what types of proposals, or as they call them, strategies we want to lay on the table. So if anybody has anything to suggest, or to say, well, I want to make sure we have this, I want to make sure we have that, or I think this will work with the town, or even like I think that won't work with the town, and I think really honestly we're looking at a plan that's probably going to have some low-hanging fruit on it, which is the things that are not going to be unreachable or a turnoff to people, but things that people will be like, well, let's look into that, or how can we argue with that? So, thoughts about elements of a plan? Mark,
Well,
any
Sure,
thoughts? Our
sure.
new member?
Well, as I said before, I'm a strong advocate for trees. Stoughton was a tree city at one point. I don't know if they've maintained their designation, but about 20 or so years ago, there was a tree committee in town. They planted a lot of trees at the West Middle High School complex at that time.
I'm sorry, that was a tree committee?
Yeah, there was a tree.
And we're a tree town?
Yeah, we were a tree city.
Is that like an official
It was
designation?
an official designation. Yeah, I think there are still some signs up around town. But I think it would be great to see if we could work to plant 300 trees for the 300th anniversary of the town.
Ooh,
I love that.
Around town
I
to
love that.
lower heat island impacts.
That would be a great idea.
wasn't there someone on the planning committee who's a tree guy?
Oh, on the planning board,
On the planning board, yeah.
I don't remember that. All I
I think
remember is
it's
there was
probably my notes from the equity training, so.
yes, I don't
But
quite.
definitely talk to the planning committee about that.
So that's a
And
very,
also the 300th anniversary
That's-
committee. I
yeah,
know at least know 2 people on that one, so.
that's a great idea. And I love the symbolism of that. And I also, let me just sort of, going off of that, are you familiar with, I'm not going to come up with the right word now, mini forests? They are something that have been, it was invented by some Japanese, whether scientists or whoever, about if you condense a lot of trees that are of different species, although of course it makes sense they have to all be native species, of course, that if you condense them in a small space, they do it like a super strong job of sucking carbon out of the atmosphere. And
I
know
haven't seen that.
I know that Cambridge has some, and I should sort of look and see the update whether other towns have some. That's always been very intriguing to me, and I've had my eye on Glen Echo and that big green space in the middle of Glen Echo, which is just grass now, which is fine. Nothing wrong with grass. But maybe that's not the spot. But I think that would be an interesting part to fold into the discussion. And it's the kind of thing where you probably have to get a grant to do it. And then, like any kind of tree, that you got to water it the first few years, or else.
Yeah. There's something called the Network of Nature that linked to it, and Brookline has an official website on their mini forests. So
Okay.
I'm popping those into the chat. Okay, and the Brookline website has quite a bit about it. They started in 2023. I think this seems like pretty accessible. And something we can do. I know that the Girl Scouts just had there were free trees available to plant if you ask by March 15th. So I don't know who ran that program, but I can also check with Jen Sears about that. And I know I sent Molly a couple of links about people or organizations that do tree planting in the area, just not with Stoughton yet. So we can reach out to them.
That's great. All right, so that's a nice concrete idea to have a focus on trees. I think you'll find a lot of wide support for that.
Yeah.
You know, it's non-threatening to people, and it's just so many benefits. All right, any other sort of concrete thing that jump out at people? I mean, obviously we know climate action plans involve solid waste issues, involve building heating and cooling issues. And of course there's what we call the preparation of the resilience, which is like, are we prepared for extreme climate disasters? Do we have the plans in place? Do we have plans that protect as many people as we can protect? So, and that might be more of an interest for somebody, and maybe a little bit more of a easier to get traction. I mean, we're seeing the disasters all over the United States, so nobody can be confident that we're insulated from them. Anyways, if people have ideas or thoughts, you can just email me at CAP Committee, because that meeting is on the 28th. The other thing I wanted to mention is really, I think I forwarded to you the MAPC Phase 2 scope of work, which unfortunately I don't have a copy of. Okay.
I got it here.
Okay, great.
Got my nose, but-
So, and again, that's what, again, we'll be talking with MAPC on the 28th about that. So clearly what's happened so far is that there have been outreach efforts and community engagement, but no what I would call open public meeting that MAPC held, like at the library, and tried to get, publicity all over town. It's been more targeting, what they call stakeholders or certain groups. And I have to say, a big gap in trying to target any stakeholders is, I don't know how you talk to businesses, because we don't have a chamber of commerce. We do have a lot of industry here. We do have some small businesses here. So I think that's difficult. And quite frankly, sometimes there's been outreach and you don't really get much of a response, or you don't get much of an interest. My thought, and I've already articulated this to MAPC, is task 5 is the strategy review, which is really about the solutions. And my thought was, and please feel free to discuss, that was like underfunded compared to some of the other things. Because they've already been trying to do relationship building and, public engagement. And in my ideal world, they would do public engagement multiple times, and each time 75 to 100 people would show up. I just don't know if that's going to happen. I mean, Bill Roth said to us at a meeting that he does those public engagement things for the master plan, and he says the same 9 people show up. Unfortunately, that might be the world we're living in. So I just felt like, and I also think that some of us feel that you're more likely to have a productive community engagement if you lay proposals on the table for discussion. Not like this is our final thing, take it or leave it, but we're considering this, we're considering that, what do you think of this? But I think you have to give people the tools to comment back on things.
Which almost sounds like, what they call task 7 there, where they've drafted something and then submit it for the town for rounds of feedback.
But that's not happening until September.
Right,
That's too late.
it is. But it does, that sounds more like what you're getting at, where you actually have something in front of them and then give us your feedback rather than give us your concerns, your ideas, whatever. Because most people, they need prompts. This is not, if you're a business owner, you're not spending any time at all considering these things. But if somebody else comes to you and says, would you do this? Is this a good idea or a bad idea for your business? You'll react positively or negatively.
Yeah.
But I think you've got to put stuff out there, and I think they should be able to. I was looking over the last couple of days at a few of the plans that MAPC has done for other towns, and they clearly know what to ask and what to throw out there. So if there was a way to do that rather than just trying to solicit from, like you said, the same 9 people, I think it would be more effective.
Okay.
Well, could I borrow that? for a
Yeah,
second?
so let's,
Because I did look at this and I had the same feeling that you did, and that you did, Michael. And I think that the strategy review in number 5, it does start by saying they will develop an initial list of strategies for input based on the community input and drawing on the best practices that they had from other plans. So I think that and I would encourage them to do the same thing as you've just suggested, give something for people to react to.
right.
And I think they've got it in here. It may not be written clearly enough or explicitly enough, but I think that that's the intent, because 9 out of 10 people don't think about the details, and they're not thinking about what you can do for climate resilience. They're too busy trying to figure out how they're going to get the kids to sports or something that day. But if you give them something to react to and prioritize or say yes or no to, I think that works much better.
All right, that's great. Other thoughts out there about just feedback or talking with MAPC about the scope of work? Alrighty.
I see that between June and August, they talked about a document outlining approach to evaluating the strategies. But I'm wondering if we could get something. I know the draft. They're talking about the first draft in September and October. I'm wondering if we can get something that's not even necessarily a first draft, but something that we can give to. Who are we responding to here? Town meeting or select board, I guess, right? Ultimately, or town manager. Our original deadline was what, June?
Well, I would say the end of June or July.
If we could give them at least something, an
That's a
interim,
really good point.
some sort of an interim report saying, okay, we're well on our way. This is what we've covered. Here are, even if it's an outline or something.
Yes.
And if that takes a little money, if developing that takes $1,000 away from something else, maybe work it in there. A little 10 hours less on this or that, but put a few hours into giving us something that we can, somewhat sophisticated looking, that we can present and say, we're well on our way. We know you said June. We're going to need a few more months, and
Right.
We're in order to make the fullest use of those monies you have so graciously allocated. So.
I agree, and that's a great, very concrete suggestion for MAPC. I love that. I love that to say that, this is, whatever, these are the proposals, this is the framework, it's going to be in these 5 issue areas, and we're still fine tuning it, but something concrete we can hand them. I think that's perfect. I think that's just what we need. I think that, it gives some kind of parameters of what we're looking for, or something concrete that we're looking for to talk to MAPC about. And I would feel much better about that, which circles back to the issue of, to this day, We don't know whether EEA is going to allow or deny our grant. So we talked to them just a week or so ago. It was supposed to be a decision in August. We were told about a month ago that the recommendations have been made as to the outstanding grant applications up to the top of the agency, but they can't get a response back. It was suggested, I said, should I write to my rep? And I did write to my rep, and I didn't hear anything back either. So that's the frustration point. Like, we still don't know, obviously, but we're in the position now where we're having to tap into the contingency funding because, which is why Bill Roth is working on lining us up to get that contingency funding so we can finish this. But I love that, a concrete document. That's going to make all the difference, I think. And also, the public, curious as to where we're at and what progress we've made. I think that's fabulous. So I love that.
Sorry, remind me where the EEA funding comes from?
Oh, so it's Department of Energy and Environmental Affairs?
Yeah.
And MAPC filed the grant application on our behalf, like it's the town's application. MAPC did the drafting last summer, and we're supposed to get a decision in August. So we haven't
And their
been
funding, that's all state funding?
That's state funding, and that's 50.
And their funding is not contingent on federal funding?
There's been no,
Okay.
right? That's why we have our expert here.
Because anything like that terrifies me right now. It's like,
Yeah.
you're depending on anything, don't look for a dime at this moment,
Right.
It's such the environment, it's just, okay, good enough.
Yeah.
Thanks.
All right. Any other thoughts about what to take back to MAPC, either about the scope of work or what you really want to see in a plan, or what you think is going to be feasible or good to see in a plan? All right.
Looking at, sorry.
No,
Just
please
looking
go.
at some of the other plans
Okay.
that they've done, they're pretty comprehensive. I'm personally, I'm hoping to see a focus on less on. I mean, it's not either or, obviously, but more of a focus on what the town can do than on residential endeavors. I'm really hoping to see things like building, whatever we do with our buildings, whether retrofitting buildings or putting in new requirements for new buildings, electrifying our fleet, anything that can be done with the schools, et cetera. The whole idea of recycling, we're not recycling in schools, things like that.
Yep.
Putting ideas in front of people, and I think we'll get to that with that Energize Williamstown website. I think it's a good idea, but we could actually do that. We could probably come up with all that stuff ourselves. Take bicycles, walk, all the great advice. 50 things you can do, blah blah. But I'm more concerned with the things that we don't have really a handle on, things we don't completely understand, that I don't completely understand. Like energy efficiency in large-scale buildings, et cetera.
Right.
So I'm hoping for a more hope on the technical side more
Right.
than anything else. And I see that at some point later in here, but particularly with that last the strategy implementation, they'll provide technical assistance to the town and its committee upon request. Kind of confused me a little bit because there's only $4,000 for that particular part of it, and it's basically to sort of get us moving in one thing, which isn't a bad idea. I
Right.
appreciate that. They do say one or more below, but if they're providing actual technical assistance, I imagine that's going to get pretty expensive pretty quickly. Whoever they're talking to is going to be billing at a higher rate than they are. On an hour, they're talking to engineers, et cetera.
Right.
They're probably going to have a higher hourly billing, so that number, I don't know how much $4,000 actually gets us in terms of technical assistance. But I'd like to put things in, if we can put things in front of people saying we would like, these are our current emissions, this is the target in 5 years, this is the target in 10 years,
Yeah.
things like that I am utterly incapable of even beginning to talk about. Those type issues.
Right.
In terms of talking about composting and walkways, and even to an extent conservation resource, etc. We can get a handle on a lot of that. But the hardcore science is basically what I'm looking at here. That I would like to see, and even things like electrifying a fleet. Get the numbers on what our current emissions are. Get the numbers on what it would cost to electrify light vehicles. Over a certain period of time, those type things. where you can actually have, charts demonstrating where we're at, the ideal, and then maybe somewhere close to the ideal,
Right.
the feasibility, what's
Right.
feasible, and then saying, this is, can you guys work with this? Can you adopt this as at least your goals in the purchasing or DPW or whatever, things like that. I want things that people can sign off on and say, yeah, we can do that.
Right.
And that's where I think where the community engagement comes in, where if you put something out there and say, this is, where you're at, this is where we can see you could be at, do you think this works for you? And they might say, no, there's absolutely no way on earth we'll ever get
Yeah.
the funding to buy that many vehicles. And okay, well, what can you get?
Right.
And then we put that in front of them and they sign off on it, and you've got a plan that people have actually committed to, at least in writing.
Yes. No, and that's great. I mean, that's the whole point of, and certainly built into this plan is, I think, and maybe I'm surprised delayed at this point, some hopefully in-depth conversations with the municipal officials who can talk about the budgetary issues, who can talk about how you replace the vehicle fleet and how that works. Last I heard from the chief of police was, we have range issues. And then, but somebody said to me, like, aren't you just driving around the town? Like, you're not going on the highway, you're not going into Connecticut. Like, they come with 300-mile range these days.
You're free-ranging
So,
cops.
but the reality is they need the EV charging stations, which I know Kathy Stanley was trying to work on 2 years ago. What's the update on that? How can we get a few chargers? We do have some. I don't know how much
Right.
some is over at the fire station. I haven't been there, but that's kind of.
Like I see where they would need the,
Yeah,
even though
need the
they're not driving
infrastructure.
far,
Yeah.
they really need the guarantee that they're going to be able to charge at any given
Sure.
time, if they're an emergency
Sure.
vehicle.
Sure, exactly.
But other vehicles less so. It's not just the police; it's other vehicles that they're not that critical at that moment.
Right.
Police, ambulance, fire
Right.
trucks, obviously, but
And part of that's being open-minded to it. And again, we're not being the trailblazers. We're like following what's worked in other towns, and there are multiple other towns that have taken some really meaningful steps. But that's really helpful. Any other thoughts about what you want us to say to MAPC, or what you want included in a plan? Again,
I want to see the stuff that works for every town, no matter what the population mix is. Like, I understand why they are saying that you have to talk to the populations first, but there is so much that works for every town in Massachusetts, works for every population. Basic incentives, basic infrastructure upgrades that we can do on a town level that will not harm any group. We need a couple more of solutions like that. They could be low-hanging fruit, they could be long-term plans, but we just need to be able to say, like, we're going to upgrade the energy use in town hall, or whatever, or put solar panels or a solar canopy or something, like things that work, that we know work. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. It doesn't have to be flashy, and probably it should not be flashy,
Right.
considering that town can react to flashy things that aren't in the shape they expect. I want to talk about the good that MAPC can bring to us, and like things that they can bring and to improve the town that go beyond risk mitigation and harm mitigation. I really want to talk into how, I want their ideas on what can just unabashedly improve things.
that's great. And,
Okay.
and I hope everybody can agree that you make buildings more energy efficient, whether it's your home or a school building or a town building. It's just a long-term positive, investment that will pay for itself. And that's actually one of the things, again, the technical assistance, give us some numbers and as to when things pay for themselves, right? So you can say, well, it may cost X this year, but within 5 or 8 years, and there's, people crunch those numbers all the time about energy efficiency or upgrading your energy system or whatever it may be, weatherization.
Yeah, I think I would also like the focus to be on things the town can do. I think someone else already said this, but not at the individual level, as the town as a whole level. I think will be far more productive because it's something that one person individually can't do. like we can all put solar panels on our house and that will solve some issues, but it won't be the same as the town being able to do this larger scale thing. So
Alrighty. All right, that sounds good. Do you want to move on to my next short? It's a brief topic. My next topic was just a by way of example topic. So I get emails from this really cool group called Mass Energize, which is, you know, communities and climate action plans and taking all these steps. And they did have a link to Energize Williamstown's website. And sometimes I just find these websites intriguing. I think I took a copy off with a copy of their website. Obviously, they're developing a climate action plan with, you know, they have target dates for reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. I liked, even quite frankly, their sort of plan summary, which is a nice 2-page plan summary. I love the idea of having a plan summary that anybody can read, because they're not going to read a 30-page document. And I also like the interactive aspect of the website with respect to, yes, people, you know, individually, voluntarily taking action and, you know, checking off the box. They did this, oh, you know, people are so-and-so more people this year got solar panels, or so-and-so more people this year switched to heat pump, or whatever the issue is. And again, it's if people, you know, I think it's cool to track that, because it feels like you know you're making progress in your outreach to people. I just thought it was an interesting idea for consideration, which goes to, you know, you would need to have a plan whereby that is part of the plan, and somebody's creating and maintaining the website
And paying for it.
and which sort of circles back to the issue of whether or not which we don't need to decide today, but whether or not our plan would include somebody on some type of basis, whether part-time and shared or full-time, a sustainability director, because those are the people who are really carrying out a years-long mission to move forward with the plan in so many ways. And as I mentioned, perhaps you may have missed the last meeting, that Sharon and Norwood are sharing a personnel who plays that role as a sustainability director. Many towns have sustainability directors, and I think that's also something where you look at what's the long-term and the short-term investment. So the sustainability committee here in town lobbied for years to hire Kathy Stanley as a consultant, and she is so much more than paid for herself. And she's been a total success. And again, her scope is much narrower than a sustainability director would be, but it's also been very profitable for the town to have invested in her, upgrading, weatherization, getting the green communities grants, spending them down, etc.
Did her position have to go through town meeting?
Wow, that's a great question. I don't know. I don't remember that it did, but you know, it's possible that I don't always pay attention to town meeting to what may have happened. I think she was hired maybe 2 to 3 years before I was on the sustainability committee. I just actually don't remember, but that's a great question, and I might ask my fellow people on that committee how that was approved. I don't know the dollar figure attached to her, because she works for about 5 different towns, or 6. So, and I don't know if the Green Communities Grant in turn pays part of her salary. Maybe she first got hired through the Green Communities Grant. That's possible, rather than a town meeting article. But that is an example of, she's really helping, you know, many of the town buildings to step into the, you know, the more energy efficient, weatherized future, updating the controls. And she's obviously very, very expert at what she does, but that's kind of a small slice of what a sustainability director would do.
A question about the Energize Williamstown website.
Yes.
Did that one actually have graphs showing how many people are doing certain things and how close they are to targets?
I think I did look at it again yesterday. I think it certainly seemed to be trying to gather the data of people.
I know it was gathering, but did it
Yes,
show it?
but
Because the Williamstown one didn't look that robust compared. Like, you can do what you want with these. Theirs seem pretty small. The Swampscott one is really they're really nice. They've got a lot of stuff on. They've got upcoming events. Whereas I think the Williamstown had like 4 different options of things to do.
Yes.
The Swampscott things, like they have a whole category for electrifying your garden equipment.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, it's a lot more detailed. It's
Okay.
really- but they're all different. Everybody's doing different things.
Yeah.
They're low cost. It's $3,000 to set up in the first year, and then annual $750. They do provide a lot of. They do the hosting. They provide the support, the design, everything else.
So who's doing the hosting? Is it Mass
Mass
Energize?
Energize,
Mass
yeah.
Energize. Wow.
And there is a 50% discount with. Was it communities with more than 25% qualifying for environmental justice block grants? I have no idea.
Well, that could well
That's us.
that could well be us. Absolutely.
So that's a nice, that's a chunk there. So it's not that expensive, but it does require an annual fee and everything else.
Wow.
And to be honest, I like it though. I'm surprised. Like in Swampscott, I'm often very skeptical of these things because I think people don't always follow through and all. But the thing that impressed me about the Swampscott one was seeing how there were like 2,000 people
Wow.
were doing X, Y, or Z. I was like,
Wow.
that's a lot of people actually paying attention
is a
and
lot.
getting themselves invested in this particular site and doing this particular thing. Now, whether they're actually doing it rather than just saying, yeah, maybe I'll replace a lawnmower this year, is a different question. But it does suggest that people are actually looking at it and are interested in it. So
That's exciting.
yeah, if you look at a bunch of them under that on the Energize page, they list because everybody's doing
What
different things. And
specifically was it, Mike?
was that
What was the town you're mentioning, Mike? I didn't write it down.
Swampscott? It's got a pretty good one.
Okay.
But if you look at a bunch, you can just click on a bunch of them and you'll see, what different towns are doing and what they're prioritizing in terms of trying to get residents. This is all very resident focused.
Yeah.
Trying to get residents to do certain things. Composting is one. There's all kinds of things, but they go from pretty big, big time projects, buying an electric car, and putting on solar panels, down to much smaller things like garden composting and electrifying your tools in your tool shed.
I love that, and I love the whole variety of things that you can start with what works for you,
Right.
what works for your family, and maybe you end there, and maybe the next year you do something else, and the next year you do something else. So that's great. Again, I feel like we really are very resource rich in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
For sort of the resources to tell us what we can do, the places we can go find information that can take us through the various steps. We're not working in the dark here whatsoever, and certainly all the towns are helping each other through Mass Energize or otherwise. So good. I'm glad you looked at that, and I'm excited to look at the Swampscott one as well. And I think that's something that. When we talk with MAPC, it's like, yeah, we're interested in an ongoing, website tool that helps. It really helps keep the conversation going, right? From one year to the next, and obviously, people will continue to make progress on that. All right. So I don't know if we have any update on a SMAC appearance. I know Rachel was talking with somebody at SMAC for an appearance, maybe in April sometime.
Aisha raised her hand.
Oh, sorry, Aisha. I don't even have my glasses on.
No worries. Thanks, Rachel. Mike, do you mind sharing that link to the site that you were referring to on the comment section, please? Thank you.
Yes. I mean, you mean the Swampscott website and the Mass Energize?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Thank you.
I can make myself a note. Share Swampscott.
Yeah, there's one page that just lists them all, so you can pick and choose whichever
Yes.
ones you want to look at. And there's at
Okay.
least a dozen of them, I think. I forget how many, but obviously it's fairly popular with a number of towns. So
Alrighty, we made ourselves a note. Thank you for that. All right. So, Rachel, any update on the SMAC appearance?
No, we're going to get in touch, I think, towards the end of March. If anyone is interested in appearing with me, I'm happy to share the spotlight there. And it is, again, so I will reach out to David Walsh this week about that. And then also, I spoke with Keith from SMAC, I think, and he says that he would love a show presented that's just about what is climate change, what is the scientific facts behind it, like in a general sense, and would love to have one of us on it if he can get a general science show going, which I don't know if there's anyone interested in that. But like apparently it is extremely, extremely easy to film like a tight 30 minutes with SMAC. And they will help us out a lot if we want to do a program, not just a roundtable. And since it is not necessarily a political topic, they don't necessarily have to do opposing views or anything as well. So I think that is a resource we can definitely look to. And Anya is very willing to help people out when they're promoting the shows. So,
Well, that sounds promising. I would love to have a scientist talk about climate change, and I think that's great because I think there's a whole range of the community. There's the range of the community who just like, okay, just tell me about solutions. I want to hear about solutions. And then there's people who would benefit from hearing more about the complexity of the science and the evidence that's all over the world. I almost even wonder if there's somebody from the high school, like a science teacher, who might be.
I'm thinking teacher at high school, maybe a college professor from one of the local colleges, see if they would be interested.
Yeah. So we had come to town a couple of years ago, a UMass Boston professor who might live just one town away. And she came and talked about climate change. This was filmed by SMAC about 2 to 3 years ago. I thought it was really very, very informative. You know, I learned a lot from her. We could ask her again. She was very gracious. She didn't charge anything. Mass Audubon will also come and speak, but they'll charge like $100 to $150. So we could definitely we'll work on that. That would be great. I think we could use a lot of positive programming on SMAC that talks through these issues. So thanks for being in touch with SMAC on that. And literally, I know Aisha's appeared with us before on SMAC. You know, anybody from the committee is more than welcome to join in whatever gets planned and to speak on these issues. So.
Sure, Modi, I would really love to talk more on climate change and the complexities so most of these times when you want to appear on such shows, you have to have data to back up, like the sea level rise, ecosystem disruption, human health, even up to food scarcity. We see the signs, but you have to have data that people can relate to, like a backup, a link that you have to show them. People like to see evidence, so that's where the scientific factor comes in, and that people can actually relate to, versus you just saying that this thing's happening.
Right. Absolutely agree. I just wanted to spend, if we go on to the next agenda item, a couple minutes on the sustainable measures, the tax incentives, the rebates, the updates. I just pulled an article from the Boston Globe, which is complex, but basically saying federal programs are still largely in place, and then there's all the state programs. I just felt like I would love to get the message out, however we do that, whether it's people we email, whether it's on our Facebook page, to say, don't assume that there's no incentives for the heat pumps and the EV chargers. And, you know, Mass Save has a bunch of incentives, including for appliances, even such things as dehumidifiers, including for, you know, people who qualify for low incomes, you know, update your appliances. So I didn't want people to feel like it's all over. I don't even want to look into this, that, or the other, because I think, you know, the incentives are all gone. So obviously it's going to change from, or could change from, you know, week to week. But I felt like, you know, there's a lot of gloom and doom out there with regard to the incentives. I felt like it wouldn't hurt to have some kind of Facebook update. What do you think about that?
I can do that.
That's a great idea.
And did you see the Globe article?
I'm going to get the solar probably this year on my taxes, so, you know.
You'll get,
anything you can
good.
get, yeah.
I know that there is, like, I have been looking at the Massachusetts tax rebates a lot, and they have some, but on the state level, some for upgrades, but not a ton. But there are some at that level as well, so.
Right. I mean, for example, the Globe says federal tax credits for EVs are still available as long, you know, you have to make less than X dollars and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And probably, quite frankly, you walk into the dealer to talk about it, they're going to know, because either, as they say, some of them apply the tax credit right there when you buy it. So I don't mean to say that there's always caveat emptor, But still, I feel like people should probably, it's better to move quickly and, you know, again, don't just assume that it's all disappeared. And, you know, if there's money out there, spend down the money, get those tax credits, get those incentives, whatever you can do as much as possible. That would be a good message to get out. Speaking of messages, just wanted to mention that Tuesday is April 22nd, Earth Day. I actually don't know if there's going to be a march in Boston about Earth Day. I never have checked that out. In an ideal world, would there be like a bunch of high school students who would like to make posters and stand out around town one of those weekends around Earth Day, just to remind people that all the concerns with the environment and sustainability are still something that we're going to work on and address and keep our focus on. I don't know whether we want to send on Facebook an Earth Day message to people, but we're obviously not doing an event because that takes 6 months of planning. So maybe a year from now, or maybe the Sustainability Committee will do it a year from now. There's probably other events in surrounding towns, but I just wanted to focus on that. So I think at a minimum, whether maybe we put a message on our website, our town website, or whether we do a Facebook thing, or I just wanted people to think about, you know, I don't want people to be discouraged and disheartened and feel like they don't want to think about sustainability anymore, because, you know, it is what it is. It's not going away. We have to face the realities and take what positive steps we can take. So, and I don't know if the schools do anything for Earth Day.
I'm fairly certain there's like at least a program at the schools. Speaking of the schools, I did find this great website that has like kits that it will send out if you request them. And I was thinking of just posting them on the Stoughton Moms group and seeing if anyone would be interested in bringing that up to their schools. And I didn't know, Molly, if you're planning on meeting with the school committee anytime soon to discuss composting.
I'm happy to meet with the school committee anytime somebody wants to come with me to discuss composting. I feel like I know within the last few months I forwarded an email from Black Earth Compost to, I think Dennis Rigo is the current director of operations and maintenance, and didn't get a response. I mean, Black Earth Compost has been trying to get some traction on that for a couple of years. And I know when I went to the Sustainable Sharon conversations a few weeks ago, that one of the schools in the area, whether it was Foxborough or Walpole, is doing some composting. I think they started with a pilot school. So again, there's plenty of resources to find out if it can work, how it can work, et cetera, et cetera. Obviously, we're also in a superintendent transition. I think it's publicly official that Ms. Miller will be the next superintendent. I think I saw that.
I think they approved her, yeah.
So she's officially appointed, I believe, which is actually a great way we want to start talking with Ms. Miller about all the issues that affect the schools and sustainability. So actually, any time that makes sense. I don't know if maybe we might want to wait till after the election to talk about meeting with the school committee and just touching base with where they're at. You know, I think the school committee is an example of, since we've been doing this work, meeting with a lot of people, raising a lot of issues, making a lot of suggestions, the idea of getting traction, like actually getting something to change or something to move in the right direction, you know, that's what we're still looking for, quite frankly. So hopefully with Ms. Miller that we can, she'll be focused on that. And I can't talk about this in very great detail. However, my other committee has been in touch with Dr. Bayetta. They're on the verge of signing some long-range energy management contract with and there's a special acronym that relates to it, to manage all the school's energy issues, including the weatherization issues, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It was going to be like, it sounds very complex, and I'm sorry, I'll have to check my notes from the other committee, maybe send people an email so I am accurate about that. It wasn't clear whether, this company that when management might be working towards decarbonization of some of the buildings over time. My comment though, and I just for the record was, this would be like some 20-year contract, is I said, don't just use your regular attorney, your municipal attorney. Go find somebody who does these contracts. I bet it's enormously important and complex. So that's something which we should understand too, what's going on with that. So I'll try to, circle back with some information about what's going on, because that might impact how the schools are going to be, managing all these sustainability issues. So making myself a note here.
I have heard of those energy service company agreements
Yes.
before,
Okay.
where the company will come in and they will agree to make energy efficiency improvements to a school
Right.
or to another public building, and they get paid back out of the energy savings
Right.
over time. And then after they're paid back, obviously, then the improvements are not costing anything.
Right.
If
Mhm.
they have a 25-year life and it only takes 15 years to pay them off.
Right, and the question in my mind was, again, a lot of the schools have made a lot of progress in weatherization. I'm sure there's still more to be done, and you have some schools with really old heating systems and boilers. Would that include, replacing things with heat pumps at some point in time? So I don't know, but that's a big commitment, actually, a 20-year contract.
Yeah.
Hopefully the schools are being well advised on all levels, whether that's going to make sense, and that might change what's in our plan, quite frankly. Although I'd still think they could fit in recycling and composting. And the other thing with the schools, again, and this is very general and not specific, is just the curriculum. So students are armed with the information they need about climate change, and then workforce development because of all the green jobs and the transition to different types of energy jobs, which could be actually a positive for students of all sorts. All right, do we have any other business that cannot be anticipated to add to our agenda tonight? And then I don't think there's anybody online for public comment. I think we do not have any of the public here. Our next meeting will be on the 31st, Monday the 31st, and that will be after our MAPC meeting, so we definitely should have a lot to report on that. And then we'll figure out the rest of the thing, and at a certain point in May, we're gonna hit all those lovely May town meeting dates. So, if there's nothing else, does anybody want to make a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, anybody want to second that? Okay, I vote in favor. Aisha?
Yes.
Okay, Rachel?
Yes.
Janet?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
And Michael?
Yes.
Okay, so I think we are officially adjourned. Thank you, everybody.